Well, hello again, and thank you, Dave. If you people will bear with me today, I have coughed almost constantly since about noon Tuesday. And I asked the Lord if He would allow me a couple hours without coughing here today. And so far, He's answered my prayers. And I probably would still been coughing if I hadn't got on my knees to our Heavenly Father. He is so wonderful. And so if you'll bear with me, if I cough a little bit, please forgive me. So, well, today I'm going to talk about something that a lot of it, most of it, isn't out of the Bible. But it pertains to what Christ has told us to do, is to be on the alert. I wanted to explain that to you because God tells us to keep watch of what's going on in the world. But there's some things that are going on in the world that the general public does not know that's happening. A lot of people just don't know it. So I thought I would bring this to you, and so that we will be aware of it. And the main reason that, another reason that I'm bringing this to you, when you do find out that these things are happening, that don't be afraid, because well, every word of God's is pure. This is Proverbs, the 30th chapter, the 5th verse. Every word of God is pure. He is a shield to them that put their trust in Him. So if we hear things like I'm going to reveal to you today, our trust is in God. Of course, not with these people. Maybe most of you, I don't know, maybe some of you, all of you have heard of the New World Order. It's been sprinkled about, and a lot of people know about the New World Order, but they don't know what's causing it and what's coming up. There are organizations that have been planning for a long time the New World Order, or in plain English, one world rule, one world government. I've read a lot of material in the last 10, 15 years. The American Free Press and books and pamphlets that have told me about these organizations and what is proposed for this country and for the world. Some of you may know there are 4 groups that are doing these planning for the New World Order. Now, these groups are the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateralist Commission, and the Club of Rome. The purpose of these groups is as follows, and I got this out of a book that I have at home that I started reading, and so I'm going to be reading the material out of this book. And who are these people and what do they stand for? Well, let's start with the Council of Foreign Relations. The most powerful clique in these elitist groups have one objective in common. They want to bring about the surrender of the sovereignty and the national independence of the United States. And you're going to be surprised who's part of that. I'm going to refer to it as the CFR, Council for Foreign Relations. That was written by Admiral Chester Ward, United States Admiral. And go on to say, many well-informed people believe that the Council for Foreign Relations is responsible for our problems. They note that the prominent bankers, industrialists, politicians, media owners, and almost everyone of any importance in the United States belongs to the CFR. Since 1953, every chairman of the Federal Reserve Board and every chairman of the Disarmament Agency and members have been members, as have all but one American Secretary of State, all but one Deputy Secretary of State, and all but one director of the CIA. Well, a lot of them been we're supposed to trust the CIA? I don't think so, not now. In addition, six of our last 9 presidents have been CFR members. What is their objective? This Admiral Chester Ward, who belonged to the CFR for 16 years, in his book, Kissinger on the Couch, which he co-authored with Phyllis Schlafly, he wrote the most, and he this repeats what he said before, the most powerful clique and these elite groups have one objective in common. They want to bring about the surrender of the sovereignty of our sovereignty and the national independence of the United States. Barry Goldwater tried to warn the American people about the CFR in his book, with no apologies. He wrote, "Their goal is to impose a benign stability on the quarreling family of nations through merger and consolidation. They see the eliminations of national boundaries," and I have heard, I don't know, maybe other people have heard, that there's a plan to join Canada, United States, and Mexico, all in one nation. I'm sure some of you have heard that, and it's in the works. It's really in the works. And going on to say, after eliminating the national boundaries, the suppression of racial and ethnic loyalties as the most expeditious avenue to world peace. Then he noted that CFR members control both political parties, both the Democrats and the Republicans. When we change presidents, it's understood that the voters are ordering a change in the national policy. Since 1945, 3 different Republicans have occupied the White House. 4 Democrats have held this most powerful post the world has to offer. With the exception of the first 7 years of Eisenhower's administration, there's been no appreciable change in foreign or domestic policy. When a new president comes on board, there's a great turnover in personnel, but no change in policy. Example, during the Nixon years, Henry Kissinger, CFR member, and Nelson Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger was a protege of Nelson Rockefeller. He was in charge of foreign policy. When Jimmy Carter was elected, Kissinger was replaced by Zbigniew Brzezinski, CFR member and David Rockefeller's protege. You would think that anyone would know of Senator Goldwater's concern, but since the CFR members control most of the media outlets, his warning was suppressed. Is the Council of Foreign Relations the dominant force of the world today? Let's go to the Bilderbergers. Those who came here are not the heads of states, but those who give orders to the heads of states. Other words, the kingmakers, like Bush and Clinton and all those presidents, they are the kings. That was written by Phyllis Schlafly. Many competent researchers are convinced that the Bilderbergers rule the world. Although they acknowledge the importance of the CFR, they note that it is an American organization, and they argue that the effort to create a global government must involve people from other nations. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands asked a group of prominent Americans and Europeans to help him determine the best way to establish a world government. The group met at the Bilderberg Hotel in Holland in 1954. The name of the hotel, oh, that was the name of the hotel where they stayed, and they took on the name of Bilderbergers. And they have met ever since, once or twice a year, to the elite people around the world. It's very secretive. The first edition of Phyllis Schlafly's book, named A Choice, Not an Echo, was published in May 1964, wherein she described the secretive nature of the group. Here's what she wrote. Several years ago, the author of this book stumbled on clear evidence that very powerful men actually do meet to make plans which are kept secret from the American citizens. While visiting in Sea Island, Georgia, this writer discovered details of a secret meeting on nearby St. Simons Island, Georgia, held at the King and Prince Hotel, February 14th to the 18th, 1957. The most elaborate precautions were taken to prevent Americans from knowing who attended these meetings or what transpired there. The participants at the St. Simons meeting were some of the biggest names in American politics, business, and press. As described by an eyewitness observer of that meeting, those who were not the heads of state, but those who gave orders to the heads of state. In other words, the kingmakers, repeated again. Officially called the Bilderberg Group, the U.S. kingmakers were joined at St. Simons Island by a similarly select assortment of foreigners. The titular head of this secret group was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. Excuse me. Going on to say, why weren't the meetings of the Bilderbergers ever mentioned in the media? Because members of the organization control the major media outlets in the United States and Europe. Only a very powerful group can conceal its existence. Are the Bilderbergers the major force behind the effort to establish a world government? We'll go on to the Trilateral Commission, another group. The Trilateral Commission is, according to Barry Goldwater, intended to be the vehicle of multinational consolidation of the commercial and banking interests by seizing control of the political government of the United States. It's happening. We can see it if you look real close and listen and see what's happening. It's coming about. Everyone who has studied the effort to unite the world organizers, the importance of Council of Foreign Nations and the Bilderbergers, but some people contend that those groups are regional, and the New World Order will be established by the Trilateral Commission. They note that members of that organization control the commerce and the banking in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia, and point to Barry Goldwater's warning. The implications in Governor Rockefeller's presentation have become concrete proposals advanced by David Rockefeller's newest international cabal, which is the Trilateral Commission. Whereas the Council on Foreign Relations is distinctly national in membership, the Trilateral Commission is international. Represented is allocated equally to Western Europe, Japan, and the United States. It is intended to be a vehicle for multinational consolidation of the commercial and banking interests by seizing control of the political government of the United States. That's where they're going to start. Is the Trilateral Commission behind the current effort to create the New World Order? They ask that at the end of each one of these articles. And then we go to the Club of Rome, a small cadre of obscure international bureaucrats are hard at work devising a system of global governance that is slowly gaining control over ordinary American lives. Maurice Strong, a 68-year-old Canadian, is the indispensable man at the center of this creeping UN power grab. That was in the National Review magazine, right out in the public there. Some conspiracy theorists believe that European royalty are behind the current effort to unite the world. They acknowledge the importance of the groups cited, but they claim that the King and the Queen of Spain and the Queen of the Netherlands are working with the members of the Club of Rome to create a world government under the control of the monarchs of Europe. Some of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the world belong to this club. In 1999, their internet site stated that their objective is act as an international, non-official catalyst for change. Remember Obama's one of his campaign's speeches where he says, "We need change. You want change? Vote for me." Well, believe me, it's changing. Not to the good, but that's what that was all about. And I mentioned Maurice Strong before, but this says, who is Maurice Strong? Although he never graduated from high school, by the time he was 21, he held an important position in international finance. And by the time he was 31 years old, he was chairman of one of the largest financial advisory companies in the world. Quite an accomplishment for someone that doesn't graduate from high school. Currently, he is a senior advisor to both Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and James Wolfenson, President of the World Bank. Boy, you can't get much higher than that. Excuse me. Where was I? Okay, most people believe that Kofi Annan heads the United Nations, but he's only a figurehead. Maurice Strong actually runs the UN, and he has recently organized its administrative structure in preparation for assuming power when the world government is established. Wow. Scary. The Global Biodiversity Assessment Report represents the concepts developed at the Second Earth Summit. It calls for the destruction of the Western civilization. That's us. And Maurice Strong has been quoted as saying, "Frankly, we may get to the point where the only way of saving the world is for the industrial civilization to collapse. They're aiming at the United States. Every one of these organizations, starting with the United States, and it's going to spread throughout the world. Going on. According to Larry Abraham and Franklin Sanders, Maurice Strong owned a 200,000 acre ranch in Colorado called the Baca. They wrote, Strong owns a large tract of land in Colorado which they call the Baca. There, Strong and his wife are establishing international community of spiritualists, complete with monasteries, devotees of the Vedic mother goddess, amulet-carrying Native American shamans, Zen Buddhists, and even Shirley MacLaine. You've probably all heard of Shirley MacLaine, the actress that kind of turned communist years back. Anyway, going on to say, they are not only promoting one world government, but they are also supporting a one world religion to substitute for Christianity. Boy, that'd be a job, wouldn't it? I don't know. Now, that's all what I read. All these groups and everything started way back in 1842, kind of a seed of the whole bunch. Lord Tennyson of Great Britain wrote a poem called Laxley Hall. Some of you may have read this, but here's what he said. For I dipped into the future, far as a human eye could see, saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that would be, heard the heavens filled with shouting, and there rained a ghastly dew from the nation's airy navies, grappling in the central blue. Till the war drums throbbed no longer, and the battle flags furled. In the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World, there the common sense of most shall hold fretful realm in awe, and the kindly earth shall slumber, lapped in universal law. This was written way back in 1842, and here he's saying universal, being lapped in universal law, speaking one world government. Lord Tennyson wrote this poem to popularize that Great Britain had a moral obligation to consolidate the world under British rule. And there were others that have embraced Lord Tennyson's poems, and one of them was Edward Bellamy. He's a United States citizen way back when. Edward Bellamy wrote, looking backwards, 2000, backwards to 1887. In 1888, he advocated socialism of world government. That's quite a long time ago. His story began in Boston in 1987 when a young man fell asleep taking a sleeping portion and woke in the year 2000 to find the world transformed into socialist utopia. Excuse me. That fellow went to sleep in 1887 and woke up in 2000 just to see the world transform into socialist utopia. Bellamy described the world he envisioned with the advent of a new millennium, and his predictions were truly remarkable when you consider that he lived over 100 years ago. That is remarkable. And he wrote, here's what Bellamy wrote. 100 years ago. An American credit card is just as good in Europe as American gold used to be, and on precisely the same condition, namely that it be exchanged in the currency of the country that you're traveling in. An American in Berlin takes his credit card to the local office of International Council, and the amount being charged against the United States in favor of Germany on the international account. That's a for instance that he envisioned. Wow, that's mind-boggling. Going on to say, how could Edward Bellamy have foreseen what is taking place today? Was he privy to some source of secret knowledge? He foresaw large corporations taken over by larger corporations until finally all commerce was merged into a single corporation, the Great Trust. 100 years later, Arthur Schlesinger of this country, Arthur Schlesinger Jr., wrote an article that appeared on the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal. In October 1993, many people were concerned because we seem to be relinquishing our national sovereignty. How true. And moving toward world government and a new world order. Arthur Schlesinger Jr. addressed that concern, and here's what he wrote. The world of law will not be attained by exhortation. Let us not let us not kid ourselves that we can attain a new world order without paying for it in blood as well as in money. Maybe the costs of enforcement are too great. National interest narrowly construed may well be the safer rule. But let us recognize that we are surrendering a noble dream. Remember those lines of Tennyson that Winston Churchill called the most wonderful of modern prophecies. Can you imagine that? But not only that, Harry Truman carried in his wallet throughout his life. Excuse me. And I'm going to read that again because Churchill said it was the most wonderful of modern prophecies, and Harry Truman's carried it in his wallet all his life. And here's that poem again. For I dipped into the future as far as the eye can see, saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that would be, heard the heavens fill with shouting, and there rained a ghastly dew from the nation's airy navies grappling in the central blue, till the war drums throbbed no longer, and the battle flags were furled. In the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World. Here Arthur Schlesinger Jr. revealed a little-known fact that both Winston Churchill and Harry Truman were dedicated to world government. That's just amazing. I told you before, I got most of this material from that book. It's called Brotherhood of Darkness, and the author is Dr. Stanley Monieth. It's quite a book. What I revealed today is a very small part of this 160-page book. I'm going to read some notes that Daniel Estulin wrote in a little pamphlet here, and some of this will surprise you too. He starts out here by saying, once considered a conspiracy theory, the secretive story of the Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderbergs, tycoons, all these tycoons are worth more than the combined wealth of everyone in the United States. That's a lot of wealth. My, oh my. Well, here's another part of what he read, or what he wrote. Esalen reveals now how the web of people and organizations have become a shadow government whose top priority is to erase sovereignty of all nation states and supplant them with global corporate control of their economies under the surveillance of an economic global police state. He reveals that all members of the groups are not bad, explaining that the membership is structured like concentric circles with varying responsibilities and relationships, but it includes almost every famous player in politics and finance, such as George W. Bush, George Soros, George McGovern, Jimmy Carter, and I read one time Barack Obama. And we know Clinton was a Bilderberger. And he also was a Rhodes Scholar. And you know what the University of Rhodes teaches? They teach one world rule. That's what they teach throughout Rhodes. And Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar. One world government. Going further a little bit, he cites Rockefeller's own admission. This is David Rockefeller right here in this country. Rockefeller, founder of the Trilateral Commission, a Bilderberg member and a board of the CFR, wrote, "Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interest of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will." And he said, if that's the charge, he says, "I stand guilty." So all that he said right there, he is guilty of. A little bit more here. Former British Cabinet Minister Lord Dennis Healey, one of the founders of the group, explained the purpose of the group to John Ronson in The Guardian. That's a British newspaper. "Those of us in Bilderberg felt we couldn't go on forever fighting one another for nothing and killing people and rendering millions homeless," he said. "So we felt that a single community throughout the world would be a good thing." Houston went on to report that his sources told him the main topic of the 2009 agenda was the world economy. He said his sources inside the world told him that the movers and shakers would be discussing two options: either prolong the agonizing depression that dooms the world to decades of stagnation, decline, and poverty, or, which we had a little while ago, an intense but shorter depression that paves the way for new sustainable economic world order with less sovereignty but more efficiency. You know, unless you've been one of the chosen by God and know what the Bible says, you'd be scared out of your wits by all this. Well, I gotta get my... Okay, here we go. All through these years of planning for the New World Order, there had to be education and convincing people to pertain to be part of this. All the elitists of the CFR, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, how do you think they would react if you come up to them face to face and said, in a nice way, that you're so ignorant, you just don't know? I don't know what they do to you. They're a pretty powerful group. But anyway, they truly believe they will rule the world. But they don't know what they don't know. And that's the worst kind. They should read Isaiah, the 9th chapter. They might have it shine a light on them. I don't think so. But anyway, Isaiah 9, the 6th verse, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. Be on Jesus' shoulders, not the Bilderbergers and the CFRs. And his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, Almighty God, the Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. They should also read the 2nd chapter of Isaiah. Of course, they probably don't believe the Bible anyway, but they should read this, and it might make them kind of scratch their head and think a little bit. 2nd chapter of Isaiah, the 11th verse. The lofty looks of man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down. And the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day, for the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty, and upon every one that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. These groups have been doing their thing in secret, so the general public doesn't know what their goals are. And they've been doing it in a little bit gradual way, so people don't realize that it's happening, unless you really know what's going on. Just imagine what people would think if it was suddenly announced that as of such and such a date, you will no longer be citizens of the United States, but you will be citizens of the New World Order. You know, if they'd have come right out and said that, it wouldn't happen, because the people wouldn't let it happen. But they're so secretive, and they're clever. They're clever. I have shocked people a couple of times, and people that know about the New World Order. I've told them, I'm sure looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to one world rule. And they looked at me and they said, you got to be kidding. I said, no, I'm referring to Jesus Christ coming back, and there will be one world rule. What a wonderful thing. And I'm looking forward to that. That's what I referred to. In one way, when I wrote this, I looked at it and Don, you didn't do that. I wrote, in one way, Jesus is like the Bilderbergers, but I had to rephrase that quick like, because in a way, the Bilderbergers are kind of like Jesus Christ, because Jesus selects. He chooses people. The Bilderberger chooses people secretly. Jesus does it right out in the open. He chooses people. Jesus said in John 15:16, he said, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. The big difference is Jesus is not secretive about his church. While on earth, Jesus trained his disciples. And we can read that in Matthew, the 28th chapter, where Jesus says Jesus trained them and what they were to do. Matthew 28, verse 18. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, All power is given to me in heaven and to me in heaven and in earth. Go you therefore and teach all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I shall command you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the world. You know, and he's still today, he's training his disciples. That's us. We're still learning. And we also have to keep reaching out to the nations, and so that we can reach all the nations. And you might ask, well, how can we do that? You pay tithes. And the tithes, some of them go down to Louisiana, to Gretna, and material is printed, and people see us on the web, and they call down there and say, we'd like some information. We'd like to know more about Jesus Christ. And down there, bless them, they send this material out. So we're a part of it. We know we're living in the end times. We know that the New World Order, that is Christ's New World Order, is close at hand. And we know that we know what will take place when Jesus does return. It's 1 Thessalonians, the 4th chapter, tells us all about that. 1 Thessalonians, 4th chapter, verse 14. For we believe that Jesus died and if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them that are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore, comfort one another with these words, and they are comforting, very much so. You know, and remember the 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, the 52nd verse, where it says we'll be changed in a twinkling of an eye. And that's what he was talking about in Thessalonians there. Revelations, the 26th or the 20th chapter, goes on to tell us that blessed and holy is he that has part of the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. And I want to finish with a verse in 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter. We'll finish with that. 1 Peter, 3rd chapter, the 12th verse. For the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayers. But the face of the Lord is against them that do evil. And who is he that can harm you, if you be fellows of that which is good? That thinks I think about the Bilderbergers and the Trilateralists and all those groups. Who can harm you if you be followers of what is good?